All right, welcome. So we are here at Tinkercad. We're going to learn how to design and make a 3D tag today. This is one I made that you should be able to see here. And you can see it's got some lettering, it's got a little beveled edge, it's got a hole for a key ring, and I might use this as my luggage tag or my name tag. And it all is going to start here in Tinkercad. So Tinkercad is an online tool. It is free, it is web-based, and you can use it with your Chromebooks. So when you open it up for the first time, you'll see a page like this. This is the web address up here, and I'm going to click Sign In, not Join, because you already have an account built in with your Google, your school Gmail account. So I'm just going to click Sign In with Google, and that's going to get me started. If you're coming to Tinkercad for the first time, it's probably going to launch you through some tutorials, which are a great place to start. There's lots of good information here, and there's lots of awesome things in Tinkercad, from 3D design tools to circuit building to a cool kind of block-based coding thing called code blocks, and even prepackaged lessons on how to build things. But today I'm going to create a new design. So Tinkercad, the screen is kind of split up into three different parts. Over here, we have how you can manipulate the space that you're seeing. This is called the work plane over here. And then I have my whole library of shapes that I have access to. And there's more than just basic shapes. You can see I have other categories that I can go through. Now, the first thing that I notice is this luggage tag that I want to build does not have a shape kind of ready to go for it. You can see I've got boxes, I have cylinders, squares, and circles, but nothing that really fits the shape that I'm looking for. So I'm going to make a new shape here. And I'm going to start that by bringing over some of these existing shapes that I can work with. So I'm going to bring over a cylinder, a box, and another cylinder. And that's going to get me close to that shape that I'm looking for. Sort of a rectangle, but with rounded sides. Now, if you want to know how big these shapes are in real life, you can see if I hover over any of those white dots that they say 20 millimeters here. That is the number by millimeters. I can change that here in the Edit Grid feature to inches if I want to, but I actually like working in millimeters with something so small. So I think that's okay for now, 20 millimeters. And what I'm going to start to do is build my new shape by bringing these existing shapes together. So I'm going to bring these shapes in and overlap them. You just click and drag. It is helpful to have a mouse when you use Tinkercad, just for your information. You can do it with a trackpad like I am today, but it does take a little bit of getting used to. Now, one of the tools to really get used to is this box up here in the corner. This helps you figure out where you are in space as you're looking at this three-dimensional object. I simply click and drag, and I'm moving around my object, and this can be really helpful. So can zooming in, which can be done on the trackpad or with these plus and minus keys right here. This really lets me know where I am in space. Okay, and I want to really be careful and look at my objects and make sure I have them the way I want. That looks pretty good. So now I want to combine all three of these shapes together. And the way I do that is I can simply click, click, click on all three, or I can click anywhere outside of my shape, click and drag, and make a box around them. And now I've just grabbed all three of those. I've selected all three things. And then I'm going to come over here to the top and I'm going to group them. So now they behave like one object. So that's great. And you can even tell that with the coloring. So my one object now is 40 by 20. And I can tell how tall it is here by 20. Well, that's too tall. I don't need it that tall. So I'm going to bring it down. So I'm going to click on this white dot up here. And I'm going to bring that down. And I could bring it up or down with this clicking and drag feature, or I could just type in a number that I want. So I want this to be kind of thin, so let's do 5 millimeters. So I just typed in the number 5, and that brought it down to the size that I'm looking for. So that's perfect. Okay, so the next feature that I want to include is kind of this beveled edge, this recessed lip to it. I think that looks nice, and so I want to create that feature. But again, that's not something that's here in the shape, so let's figure out how we're going to do that. The first thing that I'm going to do is take this shape and I'm going to make a copy of it. And you can do that over here with this duplicate tool, or you can click Control D. So I click that button here, and now I have two. Ready? Here's the second one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this second shape as a way to cut out something from this shape here, almost like a carving tool. So click over here on this one. I need to make it a little smaller. So let's say, and again, we can kind of play around with these numbers, but instead of 40 millimeters, let's call it 35. And instead of 20, let's call it 17. Okay, so a little bit smaller. And now I don't want this shape to be an actual object. I want it to cut out something from this shape. So I'm going to switch this from a solid to a hole. And now it's going to be a shape that I can use to subtract something rather than add. All right, so now I want to bring the shape back over, but I also want to raise it up because I don't want to cut right through. I want to leave a little bit at the bottom. So I'm going to bring this up, and let's bring it up. Let's bring it up 2 millimeters. And then bring it back over. And I'm going to try and get it just right there in the middle. But if you're not quite sure, we want to be kind of precise here. There is a tool that we can use here to make sure that we're right here in the middle of our shape, right? We're up here on this axis, that y-axis, and also on this x-axis. Okay, so the way I'm going to do it is, again, click and drag. And that means I've selected both objects. Now I can go over here and click this Align tool right there. And I get these interesting dots. So I want to pick the axes that I want this in the middle of. So over here, I want that one. And over here, there's that Y. Click on that one. I don't need this one over here because this is the Z, the height one. I already know exactly that I have the right height that I like. Perfect. And now I know I have it in the middle because the Align tool told me. So I'm going to click and drag again. And now I'm going to group it one more time. Now you should see that cutting happen. So this might take a second. And you can see now it's made it kind of a swimming pool. So very cool. It's got that lip. I like the weight thickness of that lip. I think that looks pretty good. And it should be thick enough that it actually prints on the 3D printer, which is my goal. Okay, I need 2 more things. I need a hole that I can add like a metal key ring to. Excuse me, that metal hole. And I need some lettering. So let's start with the hole. I'm going to bring in a cylinder here. And this one is already set up as a hole. And I want to make this very tall, but also very skinny. So let's change these numbers to, let's do 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. And we're going to bring that into the space that we want. I'm going to put it pretty close to the lip here, so that way you can get a key ring around it. Now again, if I wanted to be certain that I put it right here in the middle, I would click and drag again, and I would use that Align tool again. And I would make sure that it's right here on this axis. That's where I want it. And look, it's already kind of grayed out. That means I did it already in that space. So perfect. Okay, so I like that. I'm going to group it so that way it's part of my object. And I'm ready to go. Now keep in mind that any decision that I make here in Tinkercad, I can go back to. So if I, even though I group this, I can go back, or I can hit Control-Z or undo it, and that'll bring me back to that step. So nothing that I do here is permanent, and I can always kind of retrace my steps and get back to the shape that I had before if I want to change something. All right, my final step is to add some text. So I'm going to click on this text tool over here, bring this in. This is where you change the text that I want. I could do it letter by letter, or in this case, I'm going to bring it in all as a group. Either way is completely fine. If you wanted to kind of change how the lettering was or make each one a little unique, then you would do it individually. But I'm going to see if I can bring it in as a group. So let's do that. I can change the font if I want. Let's see if there's another font that I like. There's a sans font. Let's do a sans. Something simple. I like that. All right, and now I'm just going to try and frame it so that way it fits in my keychain. The first thing that I know is I want my lettering to be the same height as the lip of this key ring. Remember how tall this whole shape was? It was 5 millimeters. So I'm going to bring this down to 5. I know I want that much. And now it's really just a matter of clicking and dragging to get it the size that I want. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to bring it in. And you can see, oh, that's not good at all. I need to bring it in even more. I want to make sure that I don't lose that G. And then the rest of it is a little bit of finesse. I can decide how exactly I want it to look. Oops. And you can use the arrow keys here as well. So sometimes that makes more sense. then clicking and dragging. So I want this to fit well, and that looks pretty good. The alignment tool isn't really going to help us out with this step because I don't want it exactly in the middle. I want it to fit and also leave room for this hole. All right, one final step, and that's again, click and drag one more time, you guessed it, and group it, and now it behaves as one object. All right, so that final step, we've talked a little bit about how you can export things, but this is the step for anything that you want to then 3D print. I like to name it, so I'm going to give it a name that makes sense. GMS name tag. Over here, Tinkercad auto saves, so you never have to hit a save button. It's going to keep track of your steps, and all your files are going to be there for you to go back to. And now I'm going to export it as a STL file, everything in the design, STL. And it might give you a pop-up on your computer. I just want to save that file, and it's going to go to my downloads folder, and it's going to be called gmsnametag.stl. Just like anything that you then design and export in Tinkercad, it's going to pick the name that you choose over here and make it an STL file that you can then email to or send off or plug right into your 3D printer and print it and then see what it actually looks like. So it should look something like this. I chose a different font in this design today, but you should see this is about the size that we're looking for. Okay, so good luck and keep printing and designing in Tinkercad.